and get started.
Hi, Ryan.
As you can see, there's just a handful of us down here at the office, but we do have a quorum, I'm told, by all the people that have logged in online. So thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully this format works out okay. Let me know if there's any concerns with what we're seeing or hearing online for this meeting. So we'll go ahead and go to our agenda item number 2, the call to the audience. This is an opportunity for members of the public to provide input through written comment to the Standard Specifications and Details Committee on items that are not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of MAG, or on items on the agenda for discussion but not for action. Members of the public are asked to submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website and indicate for which meeting the comment is intended. Comments may be sent at any time leading up to the meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour prior to the posted start time for the meeting. Comments received prior to the deadline will be read aloud during the meeting, and comments may also be provided in person. Comments must not exceed 3 minutes in length. A total of 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience agenda item unless the chair of the Standard Specifications and Details Committee requests an exception to this limit. Please note that comments received for agenda items posted for action will be read at the time the item is heard. To attend the meeting by technological means, members of the public may access the link to watch a video stream on the MAG website by clicking on "This meeting is available to watch online" link provided at the azmag.gov website shown on the agenda here. Okay, Gordon, did we receive any comments from the public electronically?
No, we haven't.
Okay. We have someone here with us today, and I skipped over the introductions part, but we can do that now. Did you want to introduce yourself? Come on up, yeah.
So you'll need to speak into a mic.
Hi, my name is Adriana Lash. I'm with Forterra Pipe and Precast, their technical resource manager.
Did you have something you wanted to comment on today? This is your opportunity.
No, I'm just listening today.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that takes us to agenda item number 3, approval of the March 2nd, 2022 meeting minutes. Hopefully everyone had a chance to read those. As we typically have done, we'll ask Gordon to just scroll through these briefly as give everyone a chance to refresh their memory on those. And then I'll entertain a motion on those meeting minutes in a minute. Okay, if there's any comments, we can hear those at this time or entertain a motion on the meeting minutes.
This is Craig. I'll go ahead and motion for approval.
Thank you, Craig.
Second.
Thank you, Warren. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote.
I can do it.
Go ahead.
City of Avondale.
Aye.
Buckeye.
Yes.
Chandler.
Yes.
Gilbert.
I'd say yes in AJ's seat.
Thank you. Glendale.
Yes.
Goodyear.
Yes.
Maricopa County. Yes.
Yes.
Mesa.
Yes.
Peoria.
Yes.
Phoenix.
Yes.
Scottsdale.
Yes.
Surprise.
David is out, so I would say yes.
Thank you. Tempe
Yes.
and Youngtown. Don't believe he's on. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, everyone. This is actually a really good turnout. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 4. Case 21-14, revised landscaping specifications. And we'll, as far as this agenda item, we'll go ahead and talk about case 21-15, new landscaping details at the same time. These, as everyone may recall, are updates to the landscaping specifications that are currently in MAG, as well as, as well as adding new landscaping details that we have not previously had. Those have been routed for review a few different times here. As far as I'm aware, at this point, we still haven't received any comments. Is there any discussion on these specifications or details at this time? Okay. Is there anyone that feels they have not had an opportunity to receive the full feedback that you would like from your agency before we move these forward to a vote?
I think we're on our end, they're still talking about it. So I think I need like one more week. So.
Okay, no problem. Then we'll go ahead and bring this back for discussion again next month. If you do have review comments between now and next month, we'll go ahead and get those sent in to me, and we'll make sure that they get distributed for review and further discussion by those working on the landscape details. Peter, did you have something you wanted to talk about on these?
I just wanted to recommend that depending on the scope of the review comments, if they are not substantial, we could make the changes at the next meeting. Could we also potentially call this for a vote next month if those are minor?
Yeah, I think that's okay. We can have it as for possible action, and then depending on the scope of those comments that we receive, we can determine at that time whether we should delay the vote for another month or if it would be appropriate to vote.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments on these two cases?
Brian, what number did we assign to that series? The details.
I believe we ended up with 600 series.
600?
Yeah.
So I thought that irrigation was, okay, it says 600, okay.
Yeah, so currently there's the 6.
The reason I asked is because the 2206 has 601. Okay, so it's 600 and then 601. Okay.
Yeah, and that's something we could talk about before we vote on them also. If there's some great heartburn in that, it's whatever series number we can come to agree on. That's something we can do at the last second too.
Okay, if there's no other discussion on those agenda items, we can go on to agenda item number 6, the case 22-01 miscellaneous corrections. These are the same 3 corrections we've talked about each of the previous months. Section 725.7.2 to remove "and" from the last sentence of the first paragraph. Detail 535-4, a change in the notes to update the ASTM number to the correct number. And detail 140, a change in note 3, also to make a correction from an outdated or unused ASTM number to a new ASTM number. As far as I'm aware, there have not been any requests for additional miscellaneous corrections. Is there anyone at this time that has questions, would like to discuss any of the miscellaneous corrections that are listed, or talk about any new miscellaneous corrections? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 7, case 22-02, revisions to detail 260. This is a proposed revision on the retrofit of the driveway or alley entrance with 2-inch roll curb and gutter, sponsored by Warren. And if I recall, this was proposed for possible action today. Warren, I don't know if there's any updates that you would like to make, or if there's anyone on the meeting that would like to discuss this further or has any questions.
Yes, I have not received any comments, so it's up for a vote.
Does everyone recall what the proposed changes were? Would you like to have a reminder on those?
Can we do a quick reminder just because I'm sitting in for AJ?
Go ahead and
Yeah, this was just simply a revision to the notes in the bottom left that are highlighted there from what was on the previous detail. It only had 6-inch thickness for residential and 8-inch for alley. And since this detail has been used in many instances for commercial driveways, it was proposed to add the 8-inch minimum for commercial or alley, or as directed by agencies, since other agencies sometimes have thicker than the 8-inch.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion on this case.
I'll make a motion to approve the change.
Thank you.
Ryan, this is Brian with with AGC. Real quick question, Warren. I thought Maricopa County proposed a case in regards to the 1.5% slope. And I just noticed on the drawing that we have that 1.5% slope. Doesn't really affect you other than if they change it, would we have to go back to change this also?
Yeah, the 1.5% slope with some tolerance is something I'm sponsoring. So that's a good point. If we want to hold on to this one till we do go through my case, which will be coming up, and whether we should discuss that slope or not.
Yeah, I'm fine with that if we wanted to hold this until we settle that topic on your case.
It might,
And
yeah, we might be end up with the same note on this one with the tolerance on the slope.
Another option is you could approve this case, and then if yours is approved, just add that note onto the detail as well.
Okay.
that sounds,
And I'm good with that too, if we can do that.
thanks, Brian.
Okay, do you still want a motion for approval?
Yeah, a motion to approve this change. I think it's worthwhile getting the thickness up.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote on this one also.
All right, starting with Avondale,
Yes.
Buckeye,
Buckeye is a yes.
Chandler,
Yes,
Gilbert,
Yes.
Glendale,
Yes.
Goodyear. Goodyear,
Thanks, Robbie. Yes.
is that yes?
Yes.
Maricopa County,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Peoria,
Yes.
Phoenix,
Yes.
Scottsdale,
yes,
Surprise,
Yes.
Tempe,
Yes.
Youngtown. Not present. Thank you.
Okay, so that case passes. Thank you, Warren, for bringing that case forward and for your work on putting it together. We really appreciate that. Moving on to case number 8, or item number 8, case number 22-03, an update to the concrete collar on details 391-1, 391-2, and 392, as well as to remove type B installation option And Roy, do you want to give us an update on this case?
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, committee. Just as a continuation, we kind of discussed last time, what you see in front of you is the existing detail, and I tried to make some notes on it as to kind of what was discussed last time. The clouded area kind of in the upper left portion of the detail, that collar is basically the root of the case as to what we're discussing, the existing collar, and this is in an unpaved area. The way it slopes, our maintenance folks were having issues with the valve boxes filling up with dirt in unpaved areas, and so the issue that was brought to me was, can we look at modifying the collar? And I looked at some of the other details that MAG has, and they've got the collar that basically slopes 2 inches from the inside edge of the collar to the outside edge of the collar. And so that's what's being proposed basically on this detail. But on the page that you have in front of you, that's the existing detail as we kind of discussed. So the updates are basically changing the collar that you see on the type C adjustment, as well as on the type A adjustment, because both of those were showing the 2 inches of soil above the collar. And then we also discussed basically getting rid of the type B adjustment. And so to kind of keep things clear, I got rid of the type A, and I moved the view to the next sheet. So sorry, I'll catch up with you here. So what you see in front of you here is the proposed changes. I basically went through and I tried to highlight in yellow essentially what the proposed changes are. So you can see the concrete collar on both the type C and the type A, basically having a 2-inch difference from the existing grade to the top of the collar there, the valve box. Did add a note that the collar's got a 40-inch outside diameter, which is consistent with the other MAG details. And the one, I guess the one addition that I did for the type A, just to keep that, there's kind of a dimension to the far right side of the page that says C note 7, and it's basically calling out the depth to top of nut. So I kind of added a top of nut call out so that note 7 still made sense for the type A adjustment. So that's the 391-1. And then if we go to the next page, the 391-2, again, we adjusted how the collar is in the unpaved area, kind of the area that you see that's clouded. So when you get to the proposed detail, the collar has the 2-inch slope basically from the inside of the collar to the outside of the collar. I moved the view AA, which was previously on the type B collar, which was discussed to be taken off or removed, so that view AA is still applicable for the 391-2 detail. So the section was basically moved onto this sheet, and I think the other thing I have there highlighted in yellow is the Class B concrete riser pad. That was something that was on the type B, but is also applicable for this detail, but wasn't on it. So I added the note on there. So that's pretty much the 391 detail. And then if we go to the next sheet, this was something that's more of a for clarity, I suppose. This 392 detail is basically for the debris cap. So it's not necessarily has anything to do with the concrete collar, but because the concrete colors that are shown there would be different. Essentially, the 392 is updating the colors, and you can see even on the type C, the existing doesn't even show a collar. So the revised detail of 392 basically shows the slope on the collar for the type A, and the addition of the collar there for the type C. And that was just more for a consistency. Like I said, it's not integral to the detail itself. But the thought was for consistency to make that adjustment. So that's basically it. The 2-inch difference is pretty much the same thing as we have in our existing details for our survey marker, which is our 120 mag standard 120 detail, which is shown there. I kind of clouded the area, kind of shows the 2-inch difference, which is basically in an unpaved area, which is the same thing that's being proposed for the 391. So that's essentially the case 2203.
Thanks, Roy. That's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. Sounds we did get rid of the type B on 391-1, correct?
That is correct.
So on 392, that middle one, we have type B there.
Yes.
We can maybe simplify. We might just be able to get down to 2 on that debris cap now, right?
And I thought about that as well, and I'm open to the committee. That was kind of my initial thought as well, was to take it off. It's kind of a whatever the committee would like. We could certainly remove it. The other suggestion that was brought up or that was stated was, well, if you have existing type B valves that are out there and all you're doing is installing a debris cap, then this detail could potentially show how to install a debris cap in an existing type B. But my initial reflective response was to take it off, but I left it. But yeah, I'm open to whatever the committee would like to do with that.
Yeah, it seems like you can almost just make this pretty generic, this debris cap detail, and have almost just one in my thought. But not worry about the top so much. It's just the cap itself in placement. But I'll leave that up to other agencies that use those debris caps, because Chandler does not use those.
Yeah, I don't think they're used much here in Scottsdale either.
Roy, this is Craig. I guess I'll just kind of put out my opinion. I think I'm seeing things the same way you are. The type B on the 392, I mean, these are construction details. If we've got something that's existing, these really aren't intended for existing. I guess they are used, but these are really construction details. And if we're taking out a type B, that almost could add confusion to the details. So my opinion would be to remove the type B here in the 392 detail.
That's good comment, Craig. I don't disagree.
I think there'd been some previous discussion and comments on whether we should have the 2-inch difference between the existing grade and the finished grade in the past. I'm not hearing any discussion of that today. Is everyone comfortable with the first part of the detail change that we made with that adjusting ring being 2 inches above the existing grade and the slope change? Is everyone comfortable with that part of the case? Okay. Is there any further discussion or questions on this case?
So Ryan, I had one other comment for Roy. On the 391-1, we kept I guess this is the revised. We kept the note 7 talking about the valve extension. We don't have that note or any indication on the -2. for a valve extension if we've got anything deeper than 5 feet.
That is correct. That was how the existing detail was on its own, but we can, that note could certainly be added with the corresponding dimension, could be added to 391-2 if desired. I was just trying to keep as much of the existing detail as possible, or minimize the changes, but that note, I mean, to me, it would make sense.
Yeah, I'm looking at the existing and where we've got the type A, type B, and type C. It's just kind of suggesting to me that the type A and the -2 are very, very similar. And that's what kind of tied them together. I think it would be a good note to add on to the -2. That's my
Okay.
opinion anyways.
I can certainly add that.
Okay, any additional discussion?
And then it also sounds like there's we can go ahead and take the type B off the 392. The detail 392, take off the type B. Is that, yeah, right in the middle there, since we're,
I didn't hear anyone object to that.
okay,
Favor.
I think it's a good idea.
I will pull it off.
Okay, thank you, Roy. Appreciate your work on this. We'll look for those updates next month, and hopefully, again, if there's any additional comments, let's try to get those in. I feel like this case has been discussed enough that we should be able to wrap it up here pretty soon. So we'll bring it back one more month to look at those revisions, and then perhaps look for a vote the following month. Does that sound okay?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to, let's see here. Case, item number 9, case 22 dash, let's see. Oh, we talked about 22-03.
Yeah, sorry.
22-04, we kind of sort of talked about. Is there anything we want to add? That's details 120, 270, 271, and 441. I guess it's a similar change to the previous details, but we did determine it should be a new case.
That is correct. And on those, all it is, there isn't any other changes to the detail other than the making the collars consistent with the 2-inch difference between the inside of the collar and the outside of the collar.
And with just a straight grade on the collar.
Correct.
Okay.
Were these all supposed to have the reinforcing hoop steel in them? So some of these pictures don't show that in there. So
So I can certainly add that.
I mean, just to be consistent.
Yep.
They should all have the reinforcing hoop in there.
I will add that to each one.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any additional discussion on this case? Okay. Item number 11, case 22-06, new irrigation details. And oh, did I skip? Oh, sorry. Yeah, item number 10, case 22-05, revised irrigation specifications, and then also case 22-06, new irrigation details. So this is similar to the effort with the landscaping specifications and details that we talked about previously. These are now available for review and update to the specifications on irrigation. There was some questions or comments on not wanting to confuse the irrigation specifications with irrigation pipes like flood irrigation. And I think part of that effort was to refer to this as landscape irrigation to help clarify that. But we have these updated specifications, and then also, again, new details that have not previously existed that would be proposed to be added into MAG. And I don't know if I don't have access to see who all is online. I'm not sure if Wayne is on, if there's some detail you want to provide.
Yeah, this is Wayne. I was the facilitator of the Landscape and Irrigation Working Group. And much like you described, these cases would be similar in structure to the landscape, where the landscape specifications would be one case, the details would be a separate case. These were worked. Both the landscape and the irrigation specs and details were put together by our working group, which had about 40 some plus members, about 10 of those being registered landscape architects. These details, as in both cases, were pulled from various communities, details that are already in existence, modified appropriately so that they all dovetail together. And so they're, at this point in time, the working group has put them together and have got them as comprehensive as we can for all of the basic elements that will happen in roadway right-of-ways. These are not any exotic items. These are pretty standard basic elements that would go in. And so they're all intended to work together. And if these irrigation as well as the landscape ones were approved, got a thumbs up vote, then this would create the landscape and irrigation details that are standards that are much more comprehensive than what is currently in the MAG standards. So they're ready for review and ready for adoption, minus any additional comments that we might get.
Thank you, Wayne. And I might be biased with my involvement. I know the city of Mesa, we've had one of our landscape architects on our staff that's been fairly involved in here. And I know that the feedback that I've gotten from our group is that this is going to be extremely beneficial. We have been for years working on updating the city of Mesa's specifications and details and trying to get them cleaned up into a good, a better status than they have been. It's been something that hasn't received a lot of attention over the past few years or longer. And when the opportunity to address this through MAG came up, I know that was something that we looked at as a huge benefit because it'll allow us to just pull all those specifications and details out of our own standards and hopefully get some consistency throughout all the different agencies. So I appreciate all the work. You can see, I don't know how many pages that was, but there's quite a few details. There's quite a bit of rework on the specifications. We could probably go through and talk about each individual detail one at a time if you guys wanted to spend the next 3 or 4 hours. But I might suggest that with this introduction, we just allow everyone to go back and on their other leisurely time, maybe take a look at those details and start reviewing them. And perhaps we can have some discussion if there's any questions at our next meeting to go into more detail on any questions you might have about what's being proposed and why they are there. Happy to.
Ryan, I will say, Ryan, you can go ahead and be biased. Zach did a lot of work in reviewing and pulling some of these materials together. So there were a couple of us in the group there leading this effort, and Zach certainly definitely pulled his weight and was a big contributor here. I might just also say that you see here, the details are numbered 601. And if you looked at the landscape, they are at 600. As it was mentioned earlier, those series numbers can be changed pretty easily. That's pretty inconsequential.
Yes, this is more. Now, thank you. Thank you so much for putting this together. I agree. This is going to be great to have this in MAG. Just a couple of very high level comments on section 440, where you title it landscape irrigation system installation. Right below it just says irrigation. I think you can strike that on the specs. I don't think that's needed. That's not standard. And I'll let Gordon pull it up. So yeah, I think you can strike that first one.
Yeah.
Likewise on 757. Is that right? Yeah, where it says landscape irrigation right there. And then on the title up there, I suggest adding landscape irrigation system materials, because that's how it's called, referenced in 440. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, those are good comments.
And then on page 2 of 440, you reference a detail T734. I wasn't sure what that was. Under 440.5, sorry.
Yes, some of these came from some of the original City of Tempe workbooks, and we've got to get that corrected to the correct detail now.
Yep.
Sounds good. That's it for now. Thank you, though.
Could you go back really quick to the backflow detail?
Which one did you want to look at?
The backflow. I forget the number on it. Now, were we going to have that backflow be approved by the Southern California University? That's pretty common with all of these certifications.
I think that's a good comment. I know City of Mesa currently requires that on all of our landscape backflow preventers.
Chandler as well.
Yeah.
Products.
We do. I mean, it's good. It means it's been vetted through them, and then it's, the vast majority of them are, but you never know. So
Maybe in the specification, but I don't think it hurts to add it to the detail.
And in the concrete pads, we're seeing a lot of the prefab. So you might want to say, it can be cast in place or a prefab base. That's all I have for now.
Yeah, we encourage the comments. I think these ones, we'd like to see if we can get them through this year. So we've got that comprehensive set of all of the landscape and all of the irrigation details voted on and in the new MAG for next year. It's going to be a huge upgrade of sections that have been had not had sufficient attention over many decades.
Yeah, no, this is going to be great. So
love to see some uniformity in this. I think the contracting world would also.
Yeah, Peter, to add to this, something I was just thinking about. When I'm looking at landscape plans, the landscape architects have to add these details in the plans. Now they simply reference what's going to be in MAG. So
exactly.
Our plan sets are going to be much thinner.
Yeah, and as we know, there's going to be some carryover into the outside of right-of-way world. I know this was developed really for inside right-of-way, but we know this one's really going to be one that's going to be looked at carefully. I think one of the things we're going to talk about as a group in the coming future is how do we want to look at this? Is there a significant change for outside versus inside right-of-way?
Yeah, you're right, Peter. Like the backflows, those technically are usually private property. So
yeah.
Well, we look forward to receiving any comments. Certainly, there are a few little items that we've already seen, but any other comments, we'll be glad to take in and modify as we need to. So thank you for your time.
Wayne, I thought I heard you were offering a candy bar for whoever found the most mistakes. Is that?
Well, I could do that probably.
Okay, is there any more discussion or questions, comments on these two cases? Okay, we'll move on to item number 12, case 22-07, new water valve and manhole abandonment details. And Warren, again, if this is one you want to give us an update on.
Sure, thank you, Brian. I brought these up in the water and sewer working group, and Jim can share a little more on those, but we talked about it a little bit, and I made some revisions based on some feedback from the working group. Basically, it's proposing two new details in MAG, also to help eliminate the need to have these on plans and have something we can reference. The water valve detail, and they're similar in a sense where you're going to have to remove the top and the soil or concrete and so on. And then there's a note that talks about note number 2 on the water valve, matching existing grade, final layer thickness and type to match existing native AC or concrete. Obviously, there are valves in various places, pavement, sidewalks, curb ramps, things like that, where we have to abandon them. So we'd have to replace in kind of thing. But if it's an AC pavement, I was thinking, and that applies to the manhole as detail as well, that we might be able to use detail 200-1, the T-top, and then that would give better methodology and compaction in the bench to eliminate any settling and concerns out in the right of way under pavement. And again, in this case, there is that these types of situations, typically the valve is going to be left open because you're abandoning this particular valve and maybe putting another valve in proximity or so on, because this valve is no longer operational. So this detail has a backfilling with the half sack slurry. I know right now slurry is not an easy thing to find, but if we have suggestions on whether we want to use slurry or I know pea gravel has been used in the past, so maybe there's some comments on that. But so I'll stop there on this detail. Any immediate thoughts on this detail before we talk about the manholes?
Warren, this is Arvid. My only comment, I'll bring it back up again, is that if you ever have a situation where with it open, it begins to leak and they got to dig it up, if it's concreted in place, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. When we've done them in the past, we typically fill them with pea gravel. And like you said, with the market conditions right now, pea gravel might be something you want to at least leave in there as that alternative.
So what's everyone else's thought? Using
pea gravel is a good idea. It's easy. You can hydrovac it out if you got to get to the valve. If the valve leaks, it'll come to the top and tell you it's leaking.
Right.
It's a great thing.
Okay.
Just a consideration.
I can change that to pea gravel. By the way, what spec should that be?
Well, in MAG 602, we just state pea gravel. I think it might be.
It's washed. It should be washed. It should be washed pea gravel.
3/8 washed pea gravel.
Yes.
Yeah, Warren, I believe there's an ASTM for that size aggregate you could probably reference as well.
Okay.
ASTM number 8.
There we go.
Thank you. Okay, anything else on that detail? We do need to have a suggestion on detail numbers too, Gordon, on that. So moving on to the manhole detail. At this point, there are two types, and I'll talk about both. Is the type A would be the traditional type where the main and the manhole are being abandoned. And there are definitely instances where agencies may need to do that, where the choice is not to disturb the pavement, and maybe we are allowing it to be abandoned in the right of way. So this one's similar, where the hatched area at the top, we're removing the top cone sections, adjustment, collar and everything, 4-foot minimum down. The width would vary in that sense. And again, we have that backfill with half sack. So if we think that's a lot of slurry, then we can maybe consider the pea gravel there as well.
Or on a thought on that is, on the type A, the main abandonment, it may not be a bad idea to keep that as slurry, because if we're abandoning main, we're not going to get back down there. But on the type B, where the main's going to remain active, the pea gravel may still be a pretty good option.
Right, and that's what Arvid had suggested in working group. Okay.
Yeah.
I can leave that alone at this point. Now some of this language I took from Mesa's spec, or their design manual. The watertight masonry plug, the notes on that are similar to what Mesa had. Again, this uses the similar language where match existing grade, layer thickness and type. And then if it's in pavement, to use detail 200. Now on type B, I wanted to get comments from the wider group on this. If everyone thought this would be a detail that might get used. It is true that often additional manholes in a system are something that just our collections folks don't mind, but my thought is there may be instances where you have a manhole and maybe there's another newer manhole adjacent, and this manhole's corroded and you want to abandon it instead of having to rehab it. So if everyone feels like this would never be used, then we can take it off, but I wanted to get some feedback. If we did keep it, I would need to talk to some input from contractors on how to go about that bottom part where it says contractor to restore pipe crown and seal.
Yeah, that's the only thing I would have a concern about is, how sturdy is that going to hold up over time? And then if it doesn't, well, you're going to have a big problem. So, I don't know. I don't know if we would ever use something like this. So.
One thought I had someone mention that often in the bypass types of manholes, when they have to bypass manhole, that this could be used, but beyond that, I haven't had much feedback. So
I worked on a project just in the past 5 or 6 months where this exact detail was something that we could have used. And we went back and forth on deciding whether we were going to abandon the manhole and leave the pipe in place, like similar to what you're showing, or whether we just remove the entire manhole altogether and rebuild the pipe and just remove the whole manhole completely out of the system. And we went back and forth, and I talked to a couple different contractors, and one contractor said, oh yeah, we can definitely do it. But I didn't get into the details of how, because I think I still have that question.
Okay.
Is how do you, as you mentioned, restore the pipe crown? You got to remove enough to get a coupling in or something on each end, or some nature along that lines. And another contractor said it's probably just cheaper for us to excavate the whole thing and remove it than to try to get down in there and do that work. And in the end, I think we just removed the whole manhole, but it could have gone either way.
And that
That was not in a pavement area. Otherwise,
and there may be
probably would have
truth to that,
been.
even in a rehab sense, it might be take it out versus having to rehab it if you don't need it as well, right?
Yeah, I think ours happened to be off the side of the road,
Mm.
which made it a little bit simpler just to remove completely. But if you're out in the middle of traffic,
Mm.
your excavation to remove and all that may be more problematic. So
Yeah, you have to weigh all those.
Warren, just a comment from a 5, 10, 15-year down the road perspective. You dig down 4 feet and remove the top of the manhole in either setting and abandon it. It's going to get forgotten at some point, and a new project's going to come along and it's going to encounter that. And that could create quite a sizable change order for dealing with an unknown. Is there any benefit to just leaving the cap on it and filling it all the way to the surface, except for maybe the last 6 inches or something? Because again, you almost want to leave evidence of it there, because it does help the locators, especially on gravity feed sewer. They line up manholes when they do the blue stake. And without the manhole, if there was a directional change, then it's going to create a unique blue stake challenge also.
That's true, Arvid, although I think in our digital days, we should have better records of points and GPS locations. I mean, if it was a manhole on a bend, I mean, yeah, that's a good topic. I guess we
It's
could.
just a conversation you need to have with the group, because I agree with everything you just said, but there's still plenty of conflicts every day that we read about where Blue State had difficulties and it led to quite a big of a problem, and vice versa. Running into unknowns are always exciting when you're in the middle of a build.
Right. And we are technically supposed to locate abandoned facilities in the right of way as well. GPS.
Right. Which is fine until they do a topping, and now you can no longer see evidence of the old manhole. So it's just
Maybe we add electronic markers to the abandonments.
That's a good idea. Well, throw an electronic mark. Again, it's just thinking long-term down the road. In 25 years when we're all gone and the next generation's dealing with it. Not that it's a big deal now, but it might be then.
There's still surprises from the 70s out there all over the place.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. The one downside I see with that is if you come back through to do a road rebuild, then you're going to have to deal with that manhole, as opposed to if you fix it this time, you don't have to deal with it again.
Agreed.
So I do see positives and negatives on both sides. I do like the marker ball. I mean, that's a great idea. So at least something, we've got something down there that can locate it. But I think that if we're going to actually pay to have this abandoned, then let's abandon it so we don't have to deal with it again. You know, if we do a mill overlay, if we do a road rebuild or what.
Makes sense. Well, if there's no other comments, I guess we can see if anything comes up in the water and sewer and keep working on it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, we're at item number 13, new and potential cases for 2022. And is there anyone at this time that would like to talk about a new case? Carl, you had.
Yeah, this is the minimum or the slope tolerance on a sidewalk on this standard detail. The one I had previously, I gave it 1% plus or minus, but you didn't really want to change the slope from 1.5% because you've been using that for some time. So the first one here, I think this is option 1. It's a note, an asterisk and a note with 0.5% to 1.99% acceptance range. And the option number 2, scroll to that one. It's 1% to 2% acceptance range. I'm not sure if that's the right term to use, but it's given that 0.5%. Either way, I'm not sure if you've actually built the sidewalk at 2%. Would it not meet ADA? Is it 2% or less, or is it less than 2%?
Technically, I think ADA currently states that it's a 1 to 48 slope. They don't give it in percent. It's
Oh,
a 1 to
okay.
48, which, if I recall, is actually like a 2.08% or
Okay.
something like that. So you're okay at 2.00. ProAg in the future may override ADA, and I think ProAg does talk about 2.0%. But it's been a long time since I've read ProAg, so I could be mistaken on that. I think you're okay either way with 2.0%.
Okay. So I don't know if anybody has any other ideas about how to word this or how to show it. I'm open for discussion.
Yeah, I almost wonder if it'd be a better to say 1% for option 2 anyways, 1% not to exceed 2%. As I read this acceptance range, I'm thinking, okay, this is acceptance range. Is this tolerance also? Is tolerance built into this? Is it not built into that? It was just a question that popped up in my head. I was just thinking maybe if we put something in there not to exceed 2%.
Is there a low end that you don't want to make it too flat though?
I think if you go down to 0.5 to 0.5%, I think that's kind of hard to actually build. You throw tolerance in there and you're actually gonna start making it flat. So
I think with concrete, you can do a pretty good job of pouring that concrete really close to the 1.5%. But I think it's over time you get the expansion, contraction of the concrete, and you get soils that shrink and swell. And I think that's where you start getting these variations when they actually come out and do their final inspection. And I think that's what inspectors are running into. Should they accept the sidewalk when they put their level on it? So that's at least that's what I've run into in outside of Maricopa County, but in other places where it's really hard to maintain that uniform slope due to the variations in concrete and soil conditions once it's cured, once it's been there for a while.
It seems to me that through our discussion, we've determined, I think everyone has kind of determined we want to stick with the 1.5% as the design slope. And then the question that is being raised is if the standard tolerances for concrete work then cause the slope to increase above the 2.00% or to go too low. And I think we've looked at the specifications and determined that the specifications already limit the tolerances to be ADA compliant, but it doesn't hurt to add something to this detail just to reaffirm what's already dictated in the specifications. And so I think stating something similar to what you have is okay, leaving the 1.5% and just noting something to the effect of, the note would say something to the effect of that, including all tolerances, the slope shall not be less than 0.50% or exceed 2.00%. Something along after accounting for all tolerances.
The other thing to consider is what type of smart level they're using to measure these too, right? This comes into play.
Yeah, I don't know if going 2 decimal points on percent, that might be overkill.
Would you say that the range, whatever that is that you add on there, would supersede whatever the tolerances are then? And should the tolerances be adjusted in the specs or eliminated?
So right now, looking at what's actually written in the 340 standard, it talks about the surface of the concrete sidewalk shall not deviate 1/8 of an inch over 5 feet as tested with a 5-foot straight edge. So if you wanted to argue it, you could say, okay, a smart level actually is not even allowed.
That straight edge is to find bird baths, things like that too, Craig, right?
Yeah, but I think this what it's talking about here is measuring your tolerance, your surface tolerance. So
You said it's 1/8 of an inch? Over
that's
5.
what it says. 340.3.9.
What was the section again?
340.3.9. Its tolerances would be the second paragraph.
So that's basically 0.2%.
Well, I think it's the 1/8 of an inch over 5 feet from the target slope.
Hey, Craig, if I'm not mistaken, 1/8 of an inch would be about 0.01 feet, like 1/100th over 5 feet.
Yeah, I was coming up with, yeah, that's what I was looking at too.
Yeah.
That seems tighter than what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
I looked at a different tolerance. That was more than that, in terms of how far off you can be from the plans with sidewalk, and that's where I used I had that previous drawing that where if you use that tolerance, you might even exceed 2%, maybe on a wider type of sidewalk.
Yeah, and the very last paragraph of that same section, 340.3.9, talks about slopes of pedestrian facilities shall not exceed the maximum grades indicated in the ADA guidelines. Crosswalk slopes of 2%, ramp slope 8.33, landings cross slope of 2%, and flared wing of 10%. So,
well, that was understood that the inspectors all know that you're rejected if you're over 2%. It's going the other way. How flat can you go? And there's nothing other than maybe this 1/8 of an inch with the 5-foot straight edge. I could certainly take a look at that and see what those actually come out to be in percentages. So you can still use your smart level.
right.
You
But
don't,
maybe even the language could say that our target slope could be 1.5%, not to exceed 2.
if it's less than 1.5%, though, would it be rejected?
Well, I think there you would take the tolerances section here, 1/8 of an inch over 5 feet.
Okay, I can look at that, but that might be. Well, I know that the Maricopa County inspectors are using that 0.5%. It's not written in the spec, but that's what they're been instructed to do.
Okay.
Craig, this is Brian. We suggested when this came up with the county that the 0.5%, because like I said, and they were rejecting concrete sidewalk at 1.3%, right? And if you could look at any concrete But I mean, 0.5% will still allow the water that get rainwater, surface water to get off the slope. Because remember, as you can see in detail 1, and we're talking about tolerance, remember that we're matching the top of curb that has tolerance, right? So we got that tolerance, and when the sidewalk is right up against that concrete curb, we have to match it. So that's what's driving a lot of the difference between industry would like to see it at 0.05 on the low end and not to exceed 2%. And I think that is extremely doable design-wise and constructability-wise.
So a target at 1.5% with an absolute minimum of 0.5, not to exceed 2% on the maximum. That's kind of what you're saying.
We lost Brian.
I think so.
That's correct, Craig. I muted myself, but yes, if you get below 0.05%, the water won't sheet off. It'll puddle on the sidewalk.
Yeah, it seems pretty flat. I see what you're saying though. How would we do it when we have a green belt, when we have a landscape area between the sidewalk and the curb? If we go to a 0.5, then we're going to be ponding in the landscape area, just because to get a 0.5% between front of sidewalk and back of curb. Well, it's doable, definitely doable, but it would be pretty challenging because it's pretty flat. But yeah, if that's the challenge you guys are actually seeing out in the field, that sidewalks getting rejected at a 1.3. I have to look and see what all of our tolerances are. I've always, my target has always been 1.5. That's kind of what I've always used.
According to your 1/8 of an inch over 5 feet, that would 1.3 would definitely be out of tolerance.
Yeah, right.
Shouldn't our 1/8 of an inch say something more like 1.25 and use an engineering scale? Or are we in the building trade? Not sure. Just a comment. We're doing percentages. Why aren't we using engineering scale and what we're engineering? Is my question.
Yeah, I think there's probably some confusion there on what was intended in that specification.
Yeah, it's somebody.
I still feel like with this detail, there's an opportunity for adding or clarifying what the desired intent is, but I still feel like it needs to be looked at in conjunction with the specifications.
I agree.
I can see the 1/8 of an inch over 5 feet, as long as you're on a consistent, whatever the slope is. It's really, that's more of a local tolerance. Because that does, if you take 1/8 of an inch over 60 inches, multiply by 100, that's 0.2%. There's your 1.3. So do we care if it's 1%? We just care that there's no variation of greater than an inch over that, or 1/8 of an inch over that area.
And we'll have instances where we have to match up to bus pads and sidewalk ramps and so on that may have different grades too, so.
Right.
So this is Roy. I was just wondering, I mean, if we've got our sidewalk that's adjacent to our curb, and if we've got a slope on the road that's, or longitudinal slope on the road that's 3, 4, 5%, that sidewalk could be flat across and it's going to drain water longitudinally. But I'm just wondering if maybe as we're talking about the specs, it looks like in 340 under tolerances, we talk about water testing, but only in gutters. So I don't know if that would be something where we would agree that, well, we just, obviously we want the slope to not be greater than 2% because of ADA, but at whatever point less than that, as long as it isn't ponding water, that it would be, or the 0.5%, I guess, if that's our range. But I didn't know if some other type of testing, whether it's ponding water, I suppose, I guess the straight edge would be similar to that.
I think I personally would support the range 0.5% to 2.0%. But I would like to see how that works with the specifications and the tolerances listed, and identify if that puts us in any type of conflict or whether we need to adjust specifications accordingly.
I think you're gonna have to make it very clear that 1/8 of an inch over 5 feet is a local one. So you're looking for no deviation of 1/8 of an inch greater. So you're not having tripping hazards, things like that. It's not a slope requirement. It's just it's an irregularity in the local area.
So maybe the spec should be in conjunction, it should be modified that is specific to the cross slope and not necessarily a local tolerance. Is that correct?
No. And I like that idea that 0.5 to 2% is a general cross slope. That seems to make sense. Nobody's going to try to build to 0.05. It just could happen that way. They're going to shoot for the target one. But again, you got to just try to put a tolerance in there so there's no local spots that are too out of whack. No, that's, I thought, what the 1/8 of an inch was always for. I have a wife that drags her feet all the time. That's why I look for these things.
Okay, any further discussion on this? Carl, you have?
No, I can do some more research and I can come up with a written spec. It sounds like the option number 1 is a preferred one. Can you scroll up to option 1? We at the 0.5 to 2%. We'll make it 2%, not 1.99. And I'll look at maybe a modification of the written spec that would go along with this. It's clearly the cross slope. It's not the 1/8 of an inch with the straight edge might just be an irregularity that you can find with a 5-foot straight edge. But I'll come back with that next meeting.
When you say written spec, you're talking about modifying section 340?
Yeah, so putting something in 340 that's specific to cross slope.
Okay, are there any other potential new cases that we want to talk about at this point in time? I know some may come up during the working group reports, but if there's some that we want to talk about at this time, we're welcome to do that.
I had one that came to my attention, Ryan. One of the inspectors notified me that back when we updated the section 618 for storm drain installation, we lost the requirement for water stops. Water stops are still spoken to in the material part, but the actual requirement that they must be used when connecting HDPE pipe to concrete structures, we lost that statement. So I have some thoughts on how to put that back in, that maybe bring up in the working or the water sewer working group.
Okay, thank you. Any other new potential cases?
Right, I pulled up one that Jim Badowich sent me after the agenda went out that he might want to talk about.
Okay.
Gordon, did you get that latest version I sent you just earlier?
Is that earlier today or?
Yeah.
I don't have it with me now, so no.
Okay.
Might be in my inbox, but I can't access my email from this computer down here, so sorry.
Okay. All right, so I just, well, I'm gonna want to introduce this as a case. I want to just basically revise note 6 on here to clarify, you know, when a reinforced base is needed. We've had issues in the field with people saying, well, what constitutes a deep manhole based on the 20-foot depth? So this is my first shot at it. It was kind of lengthy. I did shorten it. And we'll discuss that more in the working group. But I just said, basically, I said any manhole over 20 foot deep, measured to deepest pipe invert, comma, shall require an engineered base design. I wanted to try and make it a little bit less wordy. You know, these notes, we want to keep as short as possible. So anyways, so that's what we're looking to do on this one.
You'll need to be,
Should be pretty simple.
Jim, this actually came up just yesterday at the office. We talked about it. We've got a couple of manholes coming in right now that are, 22, 23. And what we're doing, I don't know if, and we can talk about this a little bit more extensively in the working group, but what we're going to do is we're going to put a note on the plans that the manholes that exceed 20 feet, and we can lay out where it's measured from, need structural calcs, but those structural calcs can be provided in material submittals. The reason why we're doing that is so we don't slow down the design. The design can go through the process through approval, and then the contractor can come back through and get the structural design for the manholes.
Right.
It just keeps the process going a little quicker. Project can actually get started. They can start working at the same time that they're getting these structural designs. I don't know if we want to put that in the detail. That's kind of verby, kind of lengthy. But like I said, we should probably talk about that in the working group and see if there's something we can do with that.
Yeah, that's when we get it. We get it as a deferred submittal after the plans are done. So.
Craig,
Typically, when I've done manholes and measured depths, I've always measured from rim to invert. That's just the information generally provided on the plans, and that's what makes sense. At the same time, I can see, and I don't know who determined 20 feet. I don't know if there were some structural calculations that were done based on a 20-foot deep manhole, and that was measured to invert or to whatever. But it seems like the part of the manhole that's going to change is the risers, right? Probably not the base so much. And so I'm wondering if it's really 20 feet to the top of the base where that should be measured. I don't have the answer. I mean, like I said, I've typically measured manholes from rim to invert because that's what's in the plans and that's what's easy to do. So I'm just curious if anyone knows where the 20 feet came from and what it was based on originally.
Ryan, this is Arvid. If I can jump in real quick, 20 foot is a magic cutoff number for excavations with regards to engineered shoring. And we talk in the excavation world about 20 foot, but in the reality, if you try to put in a 20-foot deep manhole, you've got a 22-foot deep excavation. So now you're into the engineered shoring. And Paul, you can jump in on this. So if it's a situation where it's a shore box being installed and it goes over 20-foot vertical, then you have to bring in engineered shore boxes, which can drastically change a lot of factors. Unless it's a sloped back excavation, that also is an alternative. But Paul, what have you typically seen? Is it open X layback or is it shore boxes?
No, it's shore boxes, and the engineering criteria was developed when shoring was first being implemented, that even though they could make the gang shoring to drop in the hole and everything else, it was so cumbersome that they wanted an engineer to stamp the actual use of that. And if we laid it back and had a 10-foot ditch, we were still dealing with the 20-foot criteria as far as construction for the bedding, the backfill, and everything changed. And a lot of times that was never shown on plans or anything. And then you wind up in a situation where you're backfilling your pipe with concrete and had no idea that was going to happen. So the 20-foot thing's just been some ominous thing going on in my whole career, but I don't know any engineering data that backs it up.
There is some research on that. I got involved that very early in my career, but I don't think this is related to the excavation. I think it's a bit more coincidental. I do think it is related to the earth pressure on the actual manhole itself. I do not think it relates to the base in particular. It was looking at that, and I think that's just a convenient number thrown at it instead of saying 20 foot plus the depth of the base and the pipe and all that. I think it was more just to do a round number, but I do believe that the manhole walls are designed for a specific depth with a specific type of soil. The excavation one goes back to some Bureau of Standards stuff. Felix Vogel did the analysis on that decades ago, back in the late 70s, early 80s. But I think this is something different.
But definitely for simplicity, the way to measure it is from rim to invert.
I would agree.
Absolutely. Everything else gets calculated from that. So it gives you a specific place to start.
I think you're very safe that way because that would put it deeper than the actual wall of the manhole. As long as you're not, the wall of the manhole is not greater than 20 foot, I think you're okay, because I thought that's what the manhole wall was based on, a lateral earth pressure pushing in.
It sounds like there's some interest in this moving forward, Jim, so.
From what I've heard.
Well, we've had a problem. We had one incident where again, part of it because they want to stack the manhole, the precast shafts, less than 24 hours. And so, we brought engineers involved and said, this stuff should be reinforced. They were saying, because, you're utilizing this, sooner than the 28-day strength. And so I think the thought of this reinforcing steel was again to, and hopefully help them stack earlier too. It was just to beef it up. Some engineers you talk to say all any kind of concrete and that's performs as a structure should have reinforcing steel in it too. So just depends on what engineer you talk to. So it's worked for us. It's just I just want to define how it's measured, and I think everybody agrees it's from the rim to the first or the deepest invert. So I just want to, capture that and revise this detail without getting too complicated. So,
I think you're very safe making that assumption.
Yeah. So
I was going to mention that some people have talked about not just the base that need to be engineered, but the entire manhole structure itself. If it's that deep, would that need to be changed in the note as well then?
That's my understanding from note 6. It'd be the entire manhole, not just the base.
well, yeah, Ryan brings up a good point. Maybe we need to look at the whole manhole. So of course, look at note number 1. It says precast steel reinforced manhole section shall be manufactured in accordance with ASTM, except as modified herein. So we'd have to look at that ASTM to see if it has a certain range or depth or something. So.
And if we get into those special cases like that, those would be specially designed and part of the plans, correct? Maybe a doghouse type of manhole or something like that, or whatever that might be required for those depths and larger diameters, something like that might be. And then So maybe this detail stays as the standard type of manhole for whatever depth. And then we have that note say maybe something about required on special details shown on plans.
Yeah, Warren, that's what I was kind of saying at the beginning here is we've got a couple of them actually in-house right now that as opposed to providing the structural calcs on the plans or suggesting to the engineer to provide it as a material submittal after approval. So we're not slowing the design down, and we're gonna let the contractor deal with the actual structural calculations for each. Well, typically you're only gonna have one or two.
But we get these through, so we do material submittals, and so that's, you know, Olson or whoever submits on it, you know, they'll state on their submittal what the depth of their precast sections are supposed to be installed to. So it gives usually a range. So, but again, it doesn't deal at the base. It just deals with their precast sections. So we get those through the submittal process.
So one other question, Jim, would you suggest, or what do you think about on note number 6, actually having those structural calcs sealed as opposed to just having the numbers? So if you have like 3 manholes on a project that's 22, 24, 26 foot deep, those material submittals actually having those sealed with structural calcs?
Yeah, that's what we currently get. So any structural calc we get has to be sealed. So
okay.
But again, I want to look at that note 1 and just see what's in that C478.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we can do whatever you want with note 6. I kind of got wordy there, but you know, engineered base design providing structural reinforcing, so by the engineer. So, but we could do that. So
okay.
Okay, Jim, we'll look forward to this being a case that you present here in the near future.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to, I think we're at working group reports. If we want to start with the water sewer working group, Jim?
Yeah, okay, so we met on March 22nd. And we had a pretty good turnout. The next meeting will be April 19th. And we're gonna do that one virtual, but then I kind of entertained doing a hybrid meeting like we're doing here on our May meeting. So that's what we're still gonna shoot for. So so we did talk about the cases we've already discussed here today with Roy's case on the valve box concrete collars. Talked about the abandonment detail for Warren's case. And a couple new items we talked about is I want to look into and possibly do a case this year is to clarify some of the video inspection and the mandrel testing in the sewer testing. MAG is really kind of lax on what on requirements for testing. It says you have to do it, but it doesn't really elaborate. It gives you some tolerances, and that's about it. So we're having problems with the videos that we're getting. There's just no spec for it. I mean, we're not the depth of gauge that you measure. Usually, you're measuring the deflection or the sag in the pipe, or the grade of the pipe, I should say, after they hydrovac it. So you need water in the pipe to do that. Well, these gauges are really kind of handmade, and in some instances, with markers, and just very archaic. And you're trying to get that depth to see if you've got a belly in the pipe, and it just needs to be addressed here on MAG, I think. So we're looking at that, and the same thing with the mandrel. For instance, the 8-inch pipe, We've been using a 7.28, I think, is the diameter, but some cities use a 7.5. So there's some things that need to be clarified on the size of the mandrel. So that's what we talked about looking into as future cases. And we talked again about the depth when we just covered the depth of the reinforcing. And Crystal Flitton, we're trying to get a standard general detail for air relief valves. All the cities have various ones, so we're trying to come up with some very generic general detail for that. And then we had a couple of representatives from the concrete pipe people, Stu Waller and Adrian Lash. I think she's there with you guys there, discussing about maybe making them change the detail 200 -2 on the, or maybe -1 on the definitions of the backfill for the difference between rigid pipe and flexible pipe. So we might look at a case on that coming up. And then the other thing we talked about is a new case specs for ductile iron pipe. I'm not sure what that involved. There'll be some modifications there, I think. So then our next meeting, like I mentioned earlier, will be April 19th at 1:30, virtual. So that's all we had.
Okay, thank you. And how about our asphalt and concrete working group?
You can see by the meeting notes. So we were talking about section 702 on recycled materials that we have been talking about for the last few meetings. I think we're pretty close on language that we would want to propose. We'll have one more meeting this month to kind of make sure everybody's on the same wavelength and everything looks okay. And I'll probably be submitting those changes as new cases. It would only involve changes to section 702. And our discussions on 311 and 312 are similar. I think we're close on language again. Those will probably be in the same boat. One more run around the room and make sure everybody's kind of on the same wavelength, and it'll become a new case for those two sections also. I don't think there's any real desire to mess around with section 525 on shotcrete at this point in time, so that'll probably drop off our radar on the present time. Our next meeting format, we talked about going to exactly what we've done on this meeting, going to a hybrid kind of scenario, but many of the members were concerned about being the only people sitting in the room by themselves, as 3 of you have seen that today. So we were kind of going to do a poll as people chimed in on how they wanted to attend the next meeting and see what would happen. So at the present time, it'll be hybrid. If nothing else, you can always go on, online as we've done to them. A lot of us have done today in order to be a part of the meeting. There were a couple of, you can see in the new old business section, Mr. Godwin always has interesting things to bring forward for the group. Some interesting conversation about asphalt surface checking. There was quite a bit of conversation back and forth between Greg and Peter Rupala, City of Phoenix provided some information and so on. I think it was a good conversation. I don't think it has anything to do with cases or moving forward with changes to specifications or anything, but we always seem to have some good conversation at the end of our meetings anyway. Next meeting will be Thursday, the 21st at 1. As I say, it'll be a hybrid meeting, but it'll be on the GoToMeeting platform like we've been using in the past. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. And our outside right-of-way working group.
Yes, I have to apologize. I was unable to attend the last meeting, so I really don't have any notes. I know one was held, and to be honest, I don't even have the notes on what was discussed during that meeting. Gordon, were you able to be on that call?
Yes, I attended, and it was a very short meeting, in part because neither you nor Eric Bonds were there. Most of what was discussed were things that we already talked about as far as the new irrigation and irrigation details case, and getting some updates on the underground storage tanks. But other than that, we kind of skipped over the cases that you've been working on and that Eric's been working on. So
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Thanks for that update. We'll kick things back in. I think we've got our next meeting on the 21st, if I remember right, of April. And we'll have things kicked back in. Obviously, the subgroups have been working on the landscape details, which was the primary effort. And we've got some elements in the works. I need to get all of Eric Bonds with the City of Tempe and see if he's got one of those detail ready to go. I know we had significant comments last time, so nothing else to report.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any final item that people would like to discuss today? No general discussion? Okay, then I think we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.